something for you all to ponder. Where does reality take place? Nothing happens out there. It all happens in here. This. That's where everything, all the information is processed. So the default setting is that everything you ever experience happens in here. Yep. You might witness it out there, but you experience it in here. This is my cup. Weirdo with a beardo. And this cup has a handle. But now it doesn't. But I can see the handle, but you can't. So if you hadn't have seen the handle, if seeing is believing, you would say that this cup is handleless. Cup, it's actually a mug next to a mug. So because you can't see it, it doesn't exist in your frame of reference. But your mind fills the gap because it will deduce that most mugs have a handle. That's how your mind serves you. But we all have a different perspective. The police or people that take statements know this. So you might have 10 people that witness a car accident, but they are all in different positions and they have different cognitive abilities at that moment in time. One might have heard the accident and then had to move 3 or 4 steps to see the resulting carnage, but his mind will fill the gaps. Oh, I heard screeching cars. That car there screeched into that one. So the police will be making notes on that. But that individual never actually saw anything. He only heard and saw the result of the said carnage. Whereas they'll go and speak to the other witnesses, and each one will have a slightly different story. And then the police get all that information together and they look for the most likely scenario. The most likely being 9 times out of 10, probably the correct one. Now, I just use that loosely, but the police or people that take statements know that when people come to recollect details, it can be notoriously wrong. Because each individual is their own universe. They're creating everything inside them. So when 2 people are out on a starlit night and they look up at the stars, one person who's a couple of meters to the left has a very slightly different view of the stars from the person that's 2 meters to the right. Now, that perspective in conjunction with the stars, the difference is minuscule. However, if one of them has a slight eye impairment, then the difference is quite profound in what the 2 individuals can see. Now, these realities take place inside each individual. And there's 7.6 billion individuals on the planet, all experiencing the universe inside them, the universe within. And that's where it all is, that's where it all happens. So if the universe is inside them, then they are the measure of the universe. And by default, they are gods of that universe because they're creating it. Now let's introduce the collective. Now you've got all these creators that make up the collective. Now you have a cooperative. Now you have co-creators. Let's examine this further. let's imagine that I'll be generous, let's imagine that 90% of them are blind and fucking profoundly deaf and completely oblivious to what is real. And they're off on some illusionary imagined nonsense. And as a result of that, their vision is impaired and their hearing is impaired. So they are not operating in a place where they should be. And that brings down the entire manifested reality into a lower state, whilst the other 10% are trying to lift it. That's what's going on. But the universe is very big, and it understands that what doesn't work has to be removed. Now, nature does this all the time. If an animal reproduces and its offspring are healthy, but one of them isn't, it will be pushed out of the nest, or the parent will eat it. And this isn't about survival of the fittest, or barbarism, or savagery, or anything like that. This is nature. The parent doesn't have any. It doesn't have a mind that has to reconcile concepts like good and evil. It knows intuitively that disabled or deformed newborn is not going to survive anyway. So it lets it return back to source sooner rather than later. Okay? If it eats it, it's like some animals eat the placenta. Some humans do as well, because it understands that its next meal isn't free. The point I'm making is that this is the way of things, and humans, we might say, oh, that's wrong. How can the mum be so cruel, or how can the parents be so cruel? Well, this is denying. This is trying to put civilization onto nature, and civilization isn't civilized, it's a lie. If you think civilization is civilized, then why do we need armies? Why do we have wars? Well, those are an expression of the wars that are going on in here. The cognitive dissonance, the war between darkness and light. They're 90% against the 10%. So, when the character Jesus said, "You are gods," he means it literally. So, there is a shift. So if there's a shift into a new paradigm, a new world order, where the chaos becomes order, what will happen to those that have become stuck in the old paradigm, where there's just chaos? What will become of them? Well, my universe has changed dramatically in the past 5, 6, 7 years. It's changed dramatically in the past 12 months because it's the governments talk about flattening the curve. Well, my curve is doing that. So whilst they're trying to flatten it, whilst they're trying to defeat COVID, which is Hebrew, it's the divine presence, the Ruach Kodesh, the set-apart spirit, the comforter, the divine feminine. So they're trying to defeat it. But the wise, with intuition, a teacher within, steers them away from that nonsense. So it isn't survival of the fittest, or it isn't might is right. This is survival of the wise. You have every reason to distrust authority. You should find it repulsive, repugnant in the extreme. You should see it for what it really is, a facade. And that's real. Don't bother trying to tell a soldier or a policeman that he's a cunt in a silly costume, because you're trying to force feed pearls to swine. Now there are people in uniform that know this. I knew it for a while, and they'll have their own wars going on. They'll be okay. They'll be made to make adjustments that fit in with the coming paradigm. What doesn't work what isn't designed to prosper needs to go. And look at human affairs now, the rise of the big corporation and the demise of the small business. All the money flowing in one direction. All the corruption, all the power flowing in one direction. It's not even in the hands of government. Never was. That's just an illusion. And it's just toxic. Is that a world that's going to function indefinitely? Is that a world that nature will tolerate? Because nature, you see, it gives freely, but it also takes back. Nature lends you, and you have the use of things, life, food, sustenance, air, water, sunlight, all these things given to you freely. But at some point you're going to have to give it back. This tabernacle, this vessel, okay, is on loan. So to appreciate it, I need to look after it. But I need to understand it, and I need to know how to operate it. But nature isn't vindictive. It doesn't bear grudges. It helps those that help themselves. When wolves attack a pack of, I don't know, wildebeest, zebras, they don't go for the leaders, or the alpha. They don't attack the big healthy zebras. Fuck it, that's foolishness. It's a big powerful animal. So they split the pack and they chase it, and then they start to identify the weak, the maimed, the sick, the lazy, and that's the ones they pick off. But the wolf needs to be sustained as well. So nature gives and takes. And that's just the natural order of things. But there is a higher order. And you have a higher consciousness than these animals. So you should be considering the things that you are doing. and take responsibility for changing some of those bad things to be more in accordance with nature. But this shouldn't be guilt driven. It should just be doing the right thing. As opposed to, oh, I'll do this because if I don't, God will reject me. Because that's a nonsense as well. God's your brain. And that's where the universe is experienced. When you understand that the universe and all the galaxies and the stars, they're like neurons and synapses. It's just a big brain. Alright, unimaginably large. And it's conscious. But it doesn't judge. It's impartial. But the sun does judge. And the sun is your individual consciousness. So when the mind starts to ask questions and then starts to go inwards, it meets its own self. It meets its own individuated consciousness of the whole, like a hologram. And then the energy rises, the kundalini, things like that, and then you become one with the whole, but still remain an individual. And you are not judged. And the mother is sent, the comforter. And what does a mother do? She nurtures. She protects. Now sometimes fathers get really angry and pissed off. And it's never a nice thing. And the children have pissed the father off and the dad ain't happy, he's going to whoop some ass. But the mother will stand, if she's a good mother, will stand in front of the children to protect them from the angry father. That's what the set apart spirit does. Okay? But what about the children that are not protected? Well, a mother looks after her own children. She doesn't worry about other children. They're not hers. That's nature. It's good to be known. It's not good to be not known.